Hi Aisha, welcome. Thank you
you.
for coming. My name is Ashley and we're going to do the interview today on overall wellness. It's a campaign brought to the community by the Yukon government. So we just want to hear the voice of our citizens on how you can maintain wellness. Can you give us a little backstory, like who you are, where you're from?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, so yeah, my name is Asia Mason, and I was born and raised on the traditional territories of the Carcross-Tagish First Nation and KDFN, or Gwenlyn-Dun, so out by Annie Lake Road. And my my grandparents came up here. I'm a third generation settler, Norwegian ancestry, and they came up here in the 50s, I guess it was, maybe, and they were I think kind of sketchy, blue collar kind of criminal people-ish a little bit. And it's a good story because my dad, so my last name is Mason, and there's a lot of Masons in the Yukon, but I'm not related to any of the Masons. Yeah, there's tons of Masons in Dawson, right? And my dad used to also live in Dawson, but he's not related to any of them. So my dad is Mike Mason, but I hope my dad would be okay with me saying this. I'm sure he would. My dad, he went to FH Collins, and his parents were like I said, they were a bit sketchy, and he decided that he didn't want to have anything to do with them anymore, and they were gonna leave Whitehorse because they were on the run again from the law. I know. It's so funny. So then my dad, he picked the last name Mason out of the phone book. So then my dad he doesn't live here anymore, which is it's interesting to think about that, just because he was, here for so long, and our family line is really situated here as settlers. It's this is this is very much home. My dad was a teacher at the Yukon College. He taught carpentry for a very long time. And so I grew up without running water, very homesteady kind of folks.
The one where you're I just built a deck.
Exactly. I know, I'm so lucky. It's because that's it's in our blood. That was what we did. As somebody who is, I was born and raised here and feel very much like this is my home forest. Been really privileged to be the executive director of the Yukon Status of Women Council.
Amazing.
Which is crazy to think about. So weird.
You're who, me?
What? Me? The little old me from the bush? Okay, I'll do this. Yeah, but it's I get to do the work of being critical of these systems in as much as I can be, as somebody who is very white and very much benefited from a lot of those systems, and I just want to maybe leverage what privilege and status I do have access to in ways that will hopefully help to co-create a community and a space that allows more people and everyone to access well-being.
So it's more inclusive too, and even just the fact that you acknowledge that, because so many don't acknowledge it.
It's complex, I think. It's a complicated job sometimes, but I just feel so lucky. And I think more people, especially after the pandemic, with everything that happened, when people went into lockdown, got hooked on TikTok, we started actually ingesting more critical, what else were we doing? A lot of people maybe were developing, sourdough bread skills or building skills, but we're also eating a lot of social media stuff.
Yes.
And with the Black Lives Matter movement, and with everything that happened, there was I feel there was a shift that happened because of COVID, a shift that we're still, I think, in the midst of, but one that perhaps brought to the fore awareness for white people in particular about things like privilege, awareness on behalf of white people who would otherwise maybe not have been exposed to those things. This COVID disruption isn't always a bad thing.
No, for sure, because it's almost like a reality check in the end, right?
Totally.
It's whoa, so this is what it's like to not have access to healthcare. This is what it's like to not get nutritious meals every day. Or it's unfortunate, but at least now you have a broader lens of,
That's
life
exactly.
itself. And
Totally.
I totally agree with you. What does wellness mean to you?
It's a really big question. I think wellness is, for me, I guess I'll start by saying I think wellness is actually a really personal thing, which is to say, I think wellness can be really attached to culture. Wellness for somebody who has access to those kinds of privileges might mean like being able to do things like buy massages and get the facials and you know, like wellness I think has been appropriated as a concept by capitalism, and it makes sense because it's a very lucrative industry to talk even to define wellness according to these certain parameters like massages and facials and the best moisturizers or whatever. It's very gendered as well. But for me, wellness, I think, is like having a safe home, having a place to live.
Home security.
Home security, it's huge. Wellness is so attached to home.
And it's attached to our identities, you know?
So much.
Just knowing that you have somewhere safe, that you can let the guards down, let the day slip away and just be a human. Like
not witnessed, hey?
Yes,
not having to be
just
on.
Be raw.
Yeah. I think also for me, wellness is like, I have a really close relationship with my mom. My mom is one of my best friends and one of the most important people in my life. And we are so close, and my wellness is super dependent on that relationship because, you know, because she's my mom, she still like brings me food and she like teaches me so many things about building. She's also a really good carpenter. I also really, for wellness, think that like, I don't know, I think we're, as humans in the world we're in right now, we're so bombarded with information about how we ought to be in order to be well. I think wellness as a concept or a term is really tied up with like happiness as an industry, pharmaceuticals as industries, and that if we're not careful to define wellness in as much as we can outside of a lot of those like influences that are ultimately they're trying to grab money from us or like change the way we think about ourselves so we feel bad about ourselves, we're not being well enough, we're not being pretty or good enough in those ways. I think wellness is super situated in community. When I'm not in good relations with people who matter in community, I don't feel well. And I think that's like related to the social dimension of wellness. I think maybe that's part also of why the pandemic was just so hard, because people were so cut off socially. I've heard a lot of people describe like, I didn't even realize how much of an extrovert I was or am. And I can relate to that too, that like, you know, we're super fortunate, like you said, Ashley, to be able to like go literally 2 minutes out your doorstep into the forest. But we also do still need to be around people. We're social creatures by nature.
Especially here, the sense of community and being part of that. And we're known for having our community celebrations, like rendezvous and all of these things. In what ways does living here in the Yukon help you with your wellness?
I'm so lucky to live out of town too, because I have a buffer from Whitehorse, and that's like...
So you can make that choice.
Yeah.
You want to be social or not.
And I leave Whitehorse as soon as I'm like, and I don't come to town. I only come to town a few days a week, but like, you can just feel it like melting away. All the sort of like, you know, it's a complicated relationship that we have with other people. We need them, but also people come with their people things.
Yep. So sleep, nutrition, exercise. What do you excel the most at between those three?
Ooh, it depends on the time of year.
Good answer.
Yeah, for sure, time of year dependent. Like right now, I'm ripped, like just in terms of strength. Like I'm like, I can lift like, you know, just because I'm hauling wood and whatever. I'm so lucky, again, because I live on the same property with my mom, and she's really good at cooking. And she like comes and brings me supper like so much. I'm spoiled. So good nutrition. So exercise in the winter is usually just like skiing and walking or snowshoeing.
Do you guys have wood stoves? Do you actually chop?
Yeah, chopping wood. That's a good point. I always forget about that. It's so big. Oh God, you're right. But what I'm gonna do this time, I'm gonna chop as much of the wood as I can.
While you're in your buff stage, see? Benefit.
No.
Is there anywhere that you find more challenging with those three, like sleep, nutrition, exercise? Do you ever struggle with them, or if you do you have advice you could give to people who do?
Because of the work that I do, everything that is so like analyzed through a gendered construct sort of lens, right? And I like feel really strongly about how hard the world is on women and their body image. And so I'm like very hesitant. I also used to work as like an eating disorder support counselor. So I have like a really complicated relationship, I think, with like the certain ideas of nutrition and body image. Really believe that the more in tune, like what's the right word? The more like we are in the world, the outside world, the more that we're like in tune with the seasons, our bodies change throughout the year, you know, like we do have to put on fat for the winter because it gets freaking cold here. So we shouldn't fight that or resist it. That's a natural thing to do. And then come spring, you like have to doing the things again, and then by the end of fall you're ripped again. And it's a cycle. And it's like, I think in the Yukon especially, like I wish that, you know, we are different up here because have way more extreme seasons comparatively. And so we need to give ourselves a bit more latitude. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't eat really nutritious food, but it's not realistic. And I don't think it's healthy to try and be skinny all the time. It's not very adaptive for this environment to do that in this space.
To put yourself through that stress.
Totally. It's probably more stressful. So I really embrace the like fluctuations and I don't even think that weight is a very good metric or indication of health, but I think that I find it so relieving. It just
shows our correlation to our environment.
Exactly. Where it's like, yeah.
Which we're part of.
We're part of it.
Our environment, we're part of it.
True.
Why is being on the land important to you?
I was so spoiled growing up because we did live I grew up like on the land.
You almost don't know how you would function otherwise.
Yeah, I don't even know if I know any other way of, that's like such a hard question. I know it only when I don't have access to it, like when I go down south. Whatever the opposite of dissociation is, that's what being on the land does for me. But that's the thing about people who maybe aren't in the Yukon or have the luckiness that we have, hey? Like, they don't even know what they're missing.
Exactly. So it's the opposite for like how you're like, I can't imagine not being on the land.
Yeah.
Somebody, when they come up here, I think that's why tourism is so big here, is people are blown away.
Yeah, they are.
Not just like the visual beauty, but like the energy and just the vibe and the sense of community, especially.
Yeah. I love it when people come here and you get to see them.
Yeah.
Like for the first time.
Their reactions, especially if you're part of that first experience.
Totally.
I like to take newcomers on the free store run. But then I'm like, if we go through Skagway, in one day you can be in the desert on a snowy mountain and swim in the ocean. In one day. Like if that's not the Yukon experience.
Totally.
Do you have a favorite way to spend in nature?
This is really a boring answer, but I come by it super honestly. I'm starting to see it more as I get older too, that I actually I love just doing things around the property. I'm most at home when I'm like building something. I'm not like going hiking. I'm not like canoeing even. I'm just like I'm just outside in nature. Probably like building a chicken coop or like staining wood. It's so boring, but it's honestly it's my truth.
Wanting to take care of your homeland and your homestead gives you a sense of pride and health and wellness. That's part of wellness.
It's so much part of wellness.
Just because then no matter what happens in the world that you can't control, you can come home to that.
Yeah, that's
and you feel so
powerful.
safe and secure. We know that everyday choices can help keep us well. What are some choices that you consciously make? I'm
really bad at cooking, and I've said, I'm super lucky to be around people who are really good cooks. So I try to have like fresh fruit or vegetables in the morning. That's and raw. So just like usually just grab an apple. That's good. And that's a good one. And then breathing. I'm really interested in how breath, how you can feel your tension and you can feel the like stress that you're carrying in your chest. That heaviness. But then you can like get it out with how you breathe. So just using breath as a tool for like, it's not, I wouldn't call it like meditation at all. I would call it more like pausing, checking in. self-regulating, taking literally like 30 seconds to be like, okay, I'm just gonna like regulate myself.
Yeah.
Which is,
especially if you're in like a position at work, or you know,
Ugh.
where there's a topic somewhere brought up and you're like, I know I just need to take 5 because I don't want to react out of emotions right now.
and my cats. I'm like a total cat lady. Oh, I'm so proud of that. And I have like beautiful cats. And they're my babies because I don't have children.
Why is it important to you to protect your health and the health of others around you?
So talking with some of my friends lately who have made the decision, because there's been like a bit of a baby boom in the last, like, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but like in the last 6 months, like so many of my friends are preggo. I've heard a lot of my friends who are new parents or pregnant right now is that like this is giving them hope for the future, is having kids. It helps people want to ensure that the world is there, and for 7 generations into the future. That's, I think, like a really interesting way of thinking about why it's important to protect your health and protect your community and protect the world. I don't have that and it's very conscious. So I think for me it's like I feel very protective of.
So you get like the deadly auntie role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really weird to come back to the place where you're from, right?
Yeah.
To come back after being gone, because I think a lot of people leave and they leave for good.
Yeah.
But when you come back to the place where you have like lineage and you have ancestry and you have deep connection, there's something even more like you feel protective of that space too.
Yeah, because you can feel those maternal instincts for a place.
Yeah,
Or
for a place.
People
Yeah.
as a collective, right?
It
doesn't have to be for your cats. You
Yeah.
know? You can still have those, still have those emotions and still do those things for other people in just your own way.
It's a really beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be from your own child. You know, you can.
Yeah. I feel that for the Yukon. I feel maternally, like I feel a how would I say? Maternally for the Yukon.
Maternal instincts for your homeland. Yeah, that's beautiful. That shows like how connected you are to here as your homeland. So what would you say to somebody who doesn't want to miss work or miss out on a social event because they're feeling sick or unwell?
I would say, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I think we, at the organization that I work with, we just started a 4-day work week. So we work 4 days a week and then we get 3 days off. No reduction in pay. So it's not like 0.8 pay, it's 100% pay, 4-day work week. How it's changed, we've been doing it since July 15th. So it's been a while, a couple months. And like, we're just trying to shift the culture in the NGO world a little bit. You don't get paid very well when you work for an NGO. Some more than others, or some better than others. And we're just trying to really like practice what we preach about wellness. So we're trying to encourage each other to say like, hey, miss that meeting if you don't feel like going, or if you don't feel well. Like, don't go to things that you don't want to and you're forcing yourself to. Like, move towards the things that you feel pulled to, and we'll figure out the like ecosystem of our space, and we all have different strengths. So I guess to answer your question, I would say like, don't go to things you don't want to go to. Don't force yourself. Challenge the institution or organization that you work with. Demand supportive environments. Demand bosses who are there to like look out for your best interests.
Because if you're not in your A game, they can't expect you to perform at A game.
No, and stuff's changing in the world. Like with the recession is coming.
Yes.
And
the
cost
shifts.
Power
the new
shifts.
generation is coming into power, right?
Huge.
There's a lot of changes going on.
Some people are retiring. Let's get all these new young potential leaders to do a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
This is capitalism.
See how much people change then, right? Or how much they can accomplish because they have that rest time.
Totally.
And especially in an NGOs, usually it's heavy work.
Yeah. People need that space for themselves.
They need that time, yes, exactly. So that they can be as productive as they could be, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of working at 50% capacity 5 days a week.
With no
Give them
pension.
1 day extra off.
1 day.
That's it.
Yeah. It's way better than a benefits package. I mean, you should also have a benefits package, but on top of a benefits package, you should work 4 days a week with like no reduction in pay.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm so happy that you guys have that.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah.
I know. Tell as many people as you can.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, let's do this. Let's
Yeah.
just make it a Yukon-wide movement.
Totally.
We'll
Everyone.
alternate weeks or days if we have to, but like...
Seriously, we
4-day
could do
work
it.
week.
Yeah.
And while we're at it, let's increase the minimum wage
100%.
by like $10.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Please. We hear a lot of these days of staying home if we're sick. So when we do have to stay home because we're sick or unwell, what are some things that we can do while we're home so we don't have that FEMO? Like that?
Oh, I'm such a terrible person to ask this question to. I'm like the opposite of, I don't get it. I don't get fear of missing out. I'm like, I swear this is like because of how I was raised in the backwoods.
Yeah.
I get the opposite. But like, it's an opportunity to be lazy and allow yourself the permission to be lazy. I feel like in our culture of like hyper capitalism and productive obsessed culture that we're in, people are guilty when they're laying on the couch. They like use lockdown as an opportunity to like soak up as much doing nothing like for as long as you can and just giving yourself permission to do it. It's such a good way of like actually giving yourself the space to just not do anything.
Yeah, and then come back and be like the powerful, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and be like ready, okay, I'm ready to take on the world again.
It's like,
Because we also have that, you know how you said we have that cycle of how our body changes to
Yeah,
our environment?
yeah.
It's also on shorter scales too,
Oh,
right?
man.
And our emotional scales.
completely in our
Hormonal
cycle.
scales
Yeah.
and everything, like we need to just be more self-aware. So when we're doing like tedious things, you know, like washing your hands, how much we have to like wash our hands and hand sanitize everywhere we go, is there anything that you do to make it so it's like less annoying and tedious? Like do you use scented hand sanitizer?
I did actually, now that you mention it, yeah, maybe like I bought some nice like soap dispensers, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
And like set them up nicely at like whatever, I only have 2 sinks, bathroom and kitchen sink. And then and I bought some really nice masks, like even though they were saying after a while, you know, that you're supposed to not wear cloth masks or that cloth masks weren't as effective or whatever, but I bought like some nice bamboo ones that felt really nice against your skin. And then I kind of got into like the face washing routine a little bit more, because when you're washing your hands at night, then why not your face? And then you're like, oh, I'll just go the whole lengths and take off my mascara. Like, and then I'm like, oh, I may as well.
Actually take off your mascara.
I started doing those things like because of the lockdown.
Yeah.
So what do they call that in like, you like habit stack? You know, you stack habits.
Yeah.
And it's a really good way to change your, you can, it's like it becomes less energetically expensive or something when you're stacking habits. You're like, oh, I'm gonna brush my teeth, well, I'll just like add the flossing to that, because then it just combines it so it doesn't seem as daunting.
It just becomes natural.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at me with my full
I'm like,
routine.
exactly, I'm like every night my eyelashes don't have mascara on them. It's like
they don't
super
wake up as a
good.
raccoon every morning.
There's that too.
Is there anywhere that you go where you still routinely wear a mask?
Some of the gatherings where, you know, there might be folks who are perhaps immunocompromised, just being mindful that like that could, you don't want to bring sickness into populations that are vulnerable.
What is your opinion and voice around vaccination?
Yeah, okay, so my background, I have a degree in neuroscience, as well as having like the first 8 years of my after neuroscience degree, I worked in predominantly neuroscience research. So part of that time I spent working in a lab developing vaccines. So I have like a very different understanding, like a very super, like I have been, you know, I've like worked in labs that have built vaccines against malaria particularly. So I think I have like a very high level of literacy comparatively from a science perspective, I suppose. I also studied philosophy and philosophy of science, so I have like a fairly rigorous understanding of a lot of the dynamics around pharmaceutical industry and the limits of science and how far we can take things like falsification and so forth. All of that is to say that now I'm somebody who studies and works in the field of gender. And as we know, my body, my choice has been a phrase that has been used around access to reproductive and healthcare for folks who have uteruses for a very long time. And it's interesting. I think that my opinions, there's two scales of things, right? There's like the scale about public health and large groups, big scale human community level health. And then there's individual notions of autonomy and freedom. And that's where I think a lot of the clash happened.
Yeah, there was a lot of division between vax versus anti-vax. And
So
it's like,
much.
it doesn't have to be a division of that. It's just more about personal choice, but understanding that your personal choice affects the community around you, because we're all a part of this together.
Well,
And
I
so working in a place like you said, where it's my body, my choice, but also coming from the scientific background of
Yeah. Well, I just think that's like, you nailed it, right? It's my body, my choice in relation to vaccines is like, who are you infecting? It's not just, it's a really different bailiwick. It's a really different application of the notion of freedom and autonomy around body.
Yeah.
And I also think that we do live in community where we have an obligation and a responsibility to elders and to people who are not as privileged as we are to help promote safety. And I believe also that we live in a society and in a world where individualism is shoved down our throats every day. And part of why I believe that there's been so much resistance to vaccine mandates is that we've been co-opted a little bit by notions of freedom that have been taken to the extreme furthest end possible. And that the antidote to the world being a safer place environmentally, climate crisisly, community, whatever wise, is not about individual freedoms. It's about coming together and promoting community, promoting, what would impact beyond the borders of myself, what would impact beyond just like me as an individual. And I hope that the Yukon can lean more into that narrative.
Yeah, because like you were saying earlier, during the pandemic, we all started soaking in more social media. And I feel like there's such a fight for individualism in big cities because people don't have the space to be just by themselves or be who they are, that they have to fight to be an individual. Whereas here, because we are already blessed with that, we need to encourage the community feeling, because that is so important to us. And if we aren't healthy, if we're not protecting each other, then we lose out on community. And that's so deep rooted in the Yukon and so necessary and needed that when we lose that sense of community, it's like, what's left here? How do you prefer to stay digitally connected?
I'm a voyeur, social media
yes.
voyeur. Yeah. So I use Messenger all the time because all my people are on Messenger. TikTok is amazing and I love it. I don't produce. I'm not like a, what do they call them? Content creator of any kind. Yeah. I just consume. I'm a passive consumer. And I have really good algorithms, but I bet you that's what everyone thinks.
Yeah. Because for me, I love getting on the phone call with my sister. And just,
Do you?
Especially when we're doing, because all my siblings live in Alberta, right?
Of course.
So when I'm doing like mundane tasks around the house, I'll just put my Bluetooth headphones on.
Nice.
And even if we're just like both just like dealing with our kids and cooking dinner and like yelling at our dogs, or whatever, but it feels like we're missing it, because we just have that other person there.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. Or sometimes we'll both we'll be on video chat and we'll like both like have our snacks and we're cozy in our beds and it's like, okay, press play, and we're both like watching Netflix show at the same time.
Have you synced it? Can you sync it up like pretty perfectly?
Said you can actually download some kind of app where it like will do it automatically, so it does. But we haven't tried. We just try.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
Harry Potter marathon, sure.
Oh, you do watch parties with your sister?
Yeah, once in a while. Where do you think we should go from here in terms of looking out for ourselves and our wellness and others' wellness? Because COVID's not gone.
COVID's not gone.
How do we move forward?
I think what happened.
Well.
Yeah, that's like. Personally, I'm like a really big proponent of like social determinants of health. I think that. For too long, we've been told that health is a really internally driven thing, and that narrative has really invisibilized the extent to which health is determined by like very external factors, very social factors. I think that in the Yukon in particular, we're on this precipice right now where we've seen, I don't think that COVID necessarily like created all of the things that we're seeing. Rather, I think that COVID accelerated the revelation or the extent to which a lot of the like social issues that we are seeing, like housing crisis, opioid crisis, or overdose crisis, just like a recession translates into pushing more people further into poverty, and that perpetuating intergenerationally. Yes, exactly. I believe that a community ought to be judged or determined on the health of its poorest citizens. And I think that right now the Yukon as a whole is, like I said, we're at like a tipping point potentially where we could
It could go either way.
It could go either way. And I think that's part of what, the more that we enable the pre-existing broken systems to continue on, the more that we like allow or passively stand by as people are dying and don't have places to live or don't have safety. I think we're just going to continue actually actively promoting like precarity and a precarious class. And I think that the more that this infrastructure and structures around us abandon us or aren't there to support us in our health, we're going to start seeing higher degrees of depression and hopelessness and existential angst. The COVID lockdowns in particular, just like I think it shook people to their cores in many ways, not just here. And I truly believe that we need to pay close attention to how well resourced our communities are, and that means building not only good infrastructure and building good governance and government, it's also paying close attention to how the folks who have the least access to power and privilege are doing. And if they're able to access wellness, then that means we're doing some things right. But as it stands right now, there's a lot of work to be done.
It's like instead of throwing these lifesavers into the water when they're already like drowning, like how can we prevent them from even falling in?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what can we do ahead of time? And I know there's a lot of like headbutting because people are, when you're like, oh, we need to change this. Well, we're not saying that your work, it wasn't valued when it was in place. We're just saying it doesn't work for the world we're in now. And we have to be realistic.
Totally.
We have to acknowledge that and then do the action behind it to change it, because
it's like Dana Teza-Tram says, like, you have to be hard on the problem, soft on the people, but don't take it personally.
Yes, we're not invalidating the work that people
Totally.
before us have done. We're just saying they did that work for a completely different world. The world is 100% different now.
So different.
And then so it's trying to find that balance of meeting that defensive face, but being strong enough to stand your ground and be like, no, we need to make change because this is a tipping point, right?
It is, and that's what good leadership is, I think. Like, I think that's part of what, it's like radical accountability. It's about being able to say like, yep, nope, this isn't working. And
well, I think that's it for our interview questions.
Thank
really
you.
glad you got to come.
Me too.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear your voice, and you're going to connect with a lot of people who are going to hear the things that you said and be able to relate to you and say, oh, if like she can share her voice, maybe I can share mine too.
So good.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to come and talk about this important topic.